The Bus by the Indian poet Arun Kolatkar was first published in book form in his collection Jejuri in 1976. The collection's sequence of 31 poems depict Kolatkar's 1964 visit to the holy pilgrimage site of Jejuri, a small town in Maharashtra, Western India, which is dedicated to the Hindu folk god Khandoba, a form of Shiva. Pilgrims travel to Jejuri to visit his temple, offer turmeric, which turns the temple a brilliant yellow, and seek blessings. The Bus is the first poem of the sequence and describes the uncomfortable and disorientating overnight journey on a ramshackle bus to the site through the eyes of an outsider, whom we assume to be a version of Kolatkar himself. Although the bus ride is a spiritual journey for most of the passengers, who are making the trip in order to worship, to fulfill a vow, or as part of a ritual observance, the speaker observes the journey with a quiet detachment. The unromantic, bleak setting of the poem undercuts the reverence that you might expect on a pilgrimage, and this sets the tone for the rest of the collection, which captures the experience of a modern, often agnostic or detached urban visitor encountering the religious, mythical, and decaying world of rural pilgrimage. The tone is consistently ambivalent. It's not dismissive, but is rather sceptical, curious, often amused, and occasionally touched by moments of quiet beauty or insight. The poem comprises 8 stanzas of 3 lines and one concluding stanza of a single line. It is written in free verse, which means that it has neither a fixed metrical or rhythmic structure, nor a set rhyme scheme. Kolatkar instead manipulates rhythm through a skillful mix of end-stopping, where there is punctuation at the end of the poetic line, and enjambment, where the absence of punctuation at the end of the poetic line results in meaning spilling over from one line to the next. Not only are there no instances of caesura, i.e. pauses near the middle of the poetic line, but also there's an almost complete absence of commas. All of these features, which favour definitive stops over momentary pauses, combined with the short stanza lengths, create a rhythm which is halting yet relentless, fragmented yet continuous, to enhance Kolatkar's depiction of an arduous and disorientating journey. The poem is written in the present tense, which gives it a sense of immediacy, and the second person you, which creates a peculiar type of intimacy. It places the reader in the position of the traveller, but at the same time suggests the speaker is observing not only the journey and its passengers, but also himself, as though he is having an out-of-body experience. Kolatkar's choice of narrative perspective is perhaps a metaphor for his own spiritual detachment or skepticism. Kolatkar's use of diction and sound patterning throughout the bus is subtle but highly effective, contributing both to the physical atmosphere of the journey and the psychological unease of the speaker. The language is generally simple and unadorned, often mirroring the blunt discomfort of the setting. However, within this restrained style, Kolatkar employs carefully chosen verbs with violent or punishing connotations, such as whipping, slapping, aims and shoots, to evoke a sense of menace. These words are reinforced by striking sound patterning. The use of plosive and guttural alliteration, cold wind keeps whipping and slapping, mimics the physical battering of the speaker by the tarpaulin, echoing the rhythmic jolts of the bus. Elsewhere, sibilance in phrases like sawed off sunbeam creates a hissing, almost sinister tone, lending the sunlight a sniper-like precision. Throughout the poem, the combination of precise diction and understated sound patterning serves to highlight the speaker's disorientation and sense of alienation, undercutting any expectation of spiritual peace with a mood of unease and quiet absurdity. The poem begins. The tarpaulin flaps are buttoned down on the windows of the state transport bus all the way to Jejuri. Kolatkar begins by immersing the reader in the enclosed, muffled world of the bus. The image of tarpaulin flaps buttoned down immediately suggests a vehicle in disrepair, an improvised fix for broken or missing windows to protect the travellers from the wind, the cold, and the dust. It also has a cocooning effect. The passengers are cut off from the outside world, travelling blind, both literally and metaphorically. The enjambment across the three lines mimics the uninterrupted, juddering motion of the bus. There's no pause, no full stop, echoing the unrelenting nature of the journey. At the same time, the tight phrasing and enclosed imagery evoke a claustrophobic atmosphere, as if the bus, like the poem, is pressing forward on a narrow track with no room to breathe. The phrase all the way to Jejuri feels deliberately casual, but hints at something deeper, a long, possibly arduous journey, both physically and spiritually. The passengers are not just heading towards a town, they're moving towards a site of religious significance. Though nothing in this first stanza feels reverent, instead there's a kind of bleak realism, a sense of trudging towards something that might not be entirely enlightening or uplifting. The second stanza continues. A cold wind keeps whipping and slapping a corner of the tarpaulin at your elbow. Kolatkar immediately intensifies the sense of discomfort introduced in the first stanza. The loose corner of the tarpaulin is flapping and striking the speaker. The cold wind is not just present, it is aggressive, even punishing, as conveyed through the visceral verbs whipping and slapping. These aren't gentle breezes, they are actions with a human-like malice, bordering on violence. Note the intricate sound patterning used to enhance the hostility of the environment, with the alliteration of the semi-vowel w in wind and whipping, evoking the harsh gusts. The guttural alliteration of the k sound in cold, keeps, and corner, which sharpens the tone, almost like the sting of wind against skin. And the consonants of the plosive p sound in keeps, whipping and slapping, which reinforces the rhythmic, repeated impact of the tarpaulin, like being hit again and again. The verbs whipping and slapping have connotations of corporal punishment. While the practice of flagellation and self-mortification is associated with Christian or medieval pilgrimage, the association works on a symbolic level here. The journey is not just physically taxing, but could also be read as a kind of ritualized suffering, preparing the traveller for spiritual experience, or, in Kolatkar's case, possibly undermining it. There's something quietly absurd about the whole image. This rickety makeshift bus, a tarpaulin acting as a window, a loose flap attacking the traveller's elbow. It all contributes to Kolatkar's tone of dry, understated irony. The pilgrimage, if it is one, begins not with awe, but with petty irritation. The third stanza opens with a short, declarative sentence that creates a pause. You look down the roaring road. This is a momentary quest for orientation as we picture the traveller gazing down the aisle of the bus and out through the windscreen, which is the only unobstructed view of the outside world. The limited visibility reinforces the sense of enclosure from earlier stanzas, but now there's also a hint of yearning or anticipation as he looks out and ahead, The alliteration of the liquid r sound in the onomatopoeic roaring road reinforces the threatening and hostile qualities of the environment. The roar may refer to the bus's engine, the wind, or the sound of the tyres on the road itself. Either way, it evokes a world that is loud, chaotic, and overpowering, in sharp contrast to any notion of spiritual serenity or calm pilgrimage. The act of searching for the signs of daybreak adds a psychological dimension. It's not just a visual search for light, but also seems to be a metaphorical search for hope, clarity, or relief. There's a strong emotional feeling here. The speaker or traveller is actively seeking an end to the darkness, which may symbolize not only night, but spiritual uncertainty or alienation. The phrase, "what little light spills out of the bus," is ambiguous. It may suggest the headlights piercing the darkness, but it could equally evoke the weak interior lighting of the bus, a faint human glow against the vastness of the night. The alliteration and consonants of the liquid l sounds in little, light, and spills are soft and flowing, which contrasts with the earlier harsh plosives and gutturals. This subtle shift in sound texture hints at the first signs of emotional or tonal change. Not comfort exactly, but perhaps a longing for it. There's also an emerging sense of disorientation. The traveller is peering outward, but everything is dim, partial, muffled. We are in a liminal space, not quite night, not yet day, not quite secular, not yet sacred. The fourth stanza marks a quiet shift from gritty realism to a more surreal, introspective tone. Your own divided face in the pair of glasses on an old man's nose is all the countryside you get to see. Here the journey turns inward. Deprived of any real view through the bus windows, the traveller's only glimpse of the outside world becomes an image of himself, distorted and fragmented in the lenses of a stranger's glasses. The image of a divided face evokes a literal split, one half reflected in each lens, but also a metaphorical fracture, hinting at uncertainty, inner conflict, or disconnection. In this moment of psychological surrealism, the glasses become metaphorical windows, but they only reflect the self, not the world. The traveller, on a journey to a sacred site, finds no spiritual revelation in the landscape, only his own broken reflection, mediated through another person, but without any real human connection. The old man is reduced to a surface. He's not a companion, not a guide, just a mirror, and even that mirror is imperfect. There's an eerie intimacy to this moment. Seeing your own face reflected so closely in someone else's glasses, yet it is an intimacy that highlights isolation rather than togetherness. The countryside isn't really a landscape at all in this moment. Instead of seeing the outside world, the traveller just sees his own reflection. It's as if the journey has turned into a chance to look inward, not outward. He's forced to think about himself and the nature of his own existence, even if what he sees is strange or unsettling. The sense of disorientation intensifies in the fifth stanza. You seem to move continually forward towards a destination just beyond the cast mark beyond his eyebrows. There's a suggestion here that the bumpy ride may be causing the speaker to continually lurch forward, perhaps literally towards the old man, and this contributes to the claustrophobic physicality of the scene. The outside world, already obscured by the tarpaulin and the darkness, has now vanished entirely. The only markers of movement are internal and symbolic, with the journey itself becoming almost hallucinatory. The verb seem in the phrase "you seem to move" introduces an element of uncertainty, doubt, or illusion. The forward motion is no longer entirely physical, but psychological or metaphorical. The image of the caste mark beyond his eyebrows is a reference to a religious or cultural marking applied to the forehead, often with ash, sandalwood paste, turmeric, vermilion, or coloured powders. This mark may indicate that the old man is a Brahmin, a member of the highest Hindu caste, traditionally associated with priesthood, ritual, and spiritual authority. This places him in the symbolic position of spiritual gatekeeper, someone who should, in theory, offer access to sacred knowledge or enlightenment. Yet the speaker doesn't connect with him. Instead, he moves endlessly towards something that remains just beyond. We could read this as Kolatkar challenging the inaccessibility of a religion which is obscured by ritual, caste divisions, and inherited structures that feel alien or closed off. The fact that the goal is located not in the landscape or the temple, but in the space perpetually just beyond a caste mark, makes the whole idea of spiritual arrival tantalizingly and frustratingly just out of reach. The enjambment across the stanza also reinforces this endless motion. There's no pause, just a continued stretch forward, much like the journey itself. After all the physical discomfort and psychological unease of the journey, one might expect daybreak to bring clarity or calm. But Kolatkar undermines that expectation with the 6th stanza. Outside, the sun has risen quietly. It aims through an eyelet in the tarpaulin and shoots at the old man's glasses. The sun rises quietly, a deceptively peaceful adverb, but it immediately takes on a menacing, almost militarized role. Kolatkar's choice of the word eyelet to describe the small metal ring used to reinforce holes in fabric is particularly powerful. The eyelet in the tarpaulin acts like the barrel or scope of a sniper rifle. It's a tiny, precise opening through which the outside world takes aim. The single beam of sunlight filtered through this hole behaves like the laser sight on a sniper rifle, controlled, narrow, and lethal in its focus. The personification is stark as the sun stealthily aims and shoots, echoing the language of assassination. But the weapon is light, not a bullet. This makes the moment quietly terrifying, as if something divine or cosmic is targeting the passengers with cold precision. The verb shoots is jarring. Light is often associated with enlightenment, hope, or understanding, especially in spiritual journeys. But here it's weaponized, used against the old man, the very figure who earlier seemed to symbolize religious authority or tradition. This could be read as an ironic rejection of received wisdom or ritual, or perhaps a commentary on how belief systems can themselves come under attack from modernity, skepticism, or disillusionment. The poem continues. A sawed-off sunbeam comes to rest gently against the driver's right temple. The bus seems to change direction. Kolatkar continues to develop the sniper imagery introduced in the previous stanza. The image of a sawed-off sunbeam has the qualities of an oxymoron. A sunbeam is something that we usually associate with warmth and revelation, but this is modified with a term, sawed off, that evokes violence and criminality, as in a sawn-off shotgun. This juxtaposition is unsettling and undermines any romantic or redemptive associations with sunlight, reinforcing the poem's ironic tone. The sibilant alliteration in sawed-off sunbeam adds a soft, almost hissing quality, colouring the moment with quiet menace. There's an unnerving intimacy in the description. The beam doesn't blaze or dazzle, but comes to rest gently, a disturbingly calm gesture that echoes the cold stillness of an executioner taking aim. The choice of the right temple, a specific, vulnerable spot on the upper side of the face, strengthens the assassination imagery. The following line, the short, declarative sentence, "The bus seems to change direction," arrives as a blunt, matter-of-fact statement. Its placement and tone imply causality, as if the sunbeam, or what it symbolises, has prompted this shift. But the direction change is also ambiguous. Has the journey altered course because of a real-world turn? Perhaps a signal that they're about to reach their destination, or because something in the speaker's perspective or internal state has shifted. The verb seems maintains the poem's atmosphere of uncertainty and illusion. We can't be sure of anything, not even whether the bus has actually turned. It captures that slightly dreamlike quality of travelling half asleep, when perception wavers and time warps. The penultimate and final stanzas describe the end of the journey. At the end of the bumpy ride with your own face on either side, when you get off the bus, you don't step inside the old man's head. These final two stanzas are linked by enjambment. The sentence spills over the stanza break. That gives us a sense of continuity, like the journey hasn't quite stopped. But it also creates fracture. The physical gap on the page reminds us that something has broken. There's a pause and a sense of disconnect. This reflects the speaker's own state. He spent the poem moving towards something, the old man, the idea of meaning, but the final line denies him that arrival. The poem ends with a strange, flat refusal. He doesn't step inside the old man's head. He just gets off the bus. It's a deliberately unspiritual ending to a journey that looked like it might be sacred. The phrase bumpy ride can be read on a metaphorical level as well as a literal one. The ride has indeed been bumpy in a rickety bus over potholed roads. It has, however, also been psychologically bumpy, a disorientating and spiritually uncomfortable journey that has challenged the traveller's sense of self and created a momentary existential crisis. The image of your own face on either side probably refers back to the traveller's reflection in the old man's glasses, each lens holding an image of a distorted half. It brings the reader back to that earlier moment of self-fragmentation, emphasising that the journey has involved seeing the self, but only in fractured, mediated forms. The final stanza, as I've previously said, is simultaneously connected to and disconnected from the previous one as a result of the enjambment over the stanza break. You don't step inside the old man's head. This surreal concluding image effectively captures the speaker's sense of disorientation. He has been so caught up in watching, reflecting, and projecting that there's a faint expectation of merging with the old man, of stepping into his head, the world on the other side of the windows of his glasses, instead of stepping off the bus. And yet this doesn't happen, and the tone is curiously flat. You don't step inside the old man's head. Well, of course not. But the fact that it's stated at all suggests that the speaker has perhaps unconsciously blurred the line between self and other. He has been staring at this man for so long, reflecting on his own face through his glasses, tracking the cast mark, even imagining being shot by the sunbeam, that the final line registers a return to ordinary reality, almost with a bump. After all the strange, dreamlike interiority of the journey, this anticlimactic ending feels like the speaker is blinking, stepping off, and realising, a little dazed and confused, that he's still himself, and the old man is still just a stranger after all. The failure to merge with the old man or achieve any kind of meaningful epiphany reinforces Kolatkar's deep skepticism towards traditional narratives of pilgrimage, religious transformation, or spiritual communion. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques and English literature texts.